With that, I think I'll give a quick administrative review. First off, this meeting is being recorded and we posted to the Ampersand YouTube channel to take attendance per the Federal Advisory Committee Act. If you haven't already, please sign in the room where you can find one clerk. And if you're online, please enter your name and affiliation in the chat. We have a lot of people attending online rather than in person, so as always, be sure to direct your conversations toward the middle of the room wherever possible, because that is how they can see and hear us. Projection is great, although they will sometimes pick up on your sideline whispers, so, you know. Try to save those for the break if you're able. It's that, and one thing, for those in the room, we have a new feature. Temporary name thing, where you can assist our new note takers by writing your point, so they know who's talking, when, and what it consists of. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to you, Tom.
Thanks. So welcome, everybody. We've got a lot of administrative business to do, a lot of committee work to do today. You'll notice on the agenda, there's some new words, focused forum. And that's something that I added in. Since we didn't have any briefs from the TPA agencies, I figured we could use that time to do sort of a book report on something that happened on the administrative record. I asked everybody for what they wanted to hear about and got one response that we might want to talk about the life cycle scopes, cost and schedule report. So I have a quick talk on that when it's time. But in the meantime, we have some draft advice to come through. We got elections. We've got normally this would be the meeting where we have a draft work plan from the TPA agencies and we talk through what that means for this committee. We don't have that, so I threw together sort of my wish list, and we can talk about how that, whether that meshes with everybody's thoughts or whether there's something we need to add. And then I guess, as Josh said, please put your name in the chat. I see that happening. Let's go around the room and have everyone say who you are, why you're here, and something you're looking forward to doing this month. I'll start. I'm Tom Cecilia. I'm the chair of the committee. I represent the Oregon Department of Energy. And on Father's Day, I'm singing a symphony called Return to Middle Earth, and I get to sing in Elvish and Orcish, which is new to me, and I get to bang rocks symphonically.
So, around the table in the room, I think I'll take the next one. My name is Josh Kavanaugh, for the HAB facilitation team. I'm here because I would not dare miss a HAB meeting. And this month, I'm looking forward to jury duty in the next 2 weeks. Got to go out on the left.
I'm Ryan Miller, the education manager for ecology, and what's the thing why we're here?
Why we're here is what we're doing this month.
Oh, well, I'm here because I represent the ecology on the HAB and support all of you. I would dare not miss a HAB meeting, like Josh said, and what I'm looking forward to the next month is welcoming my baby. So, well, we're exciting time.
My name's Rob Davis. I represent the city of Pasco. And I guess upcoming events for us is going to the beach.
You're almost at the table.
Bob Ford, member of the public, not a member of the HAB, and I'm just trying to find out what's going on. And next month, if I can settle down after spending a lot of time traveling. So,
Kathy Dubois. I am non-management, non-union, and what I look forward to in the next month is just spending more time with my 4-month-old grandbaby.
I'm Annie McCartney. I'm with the EPA, and I'm here to hear what everyone has to share about their thoughts on the 324 building. And I'm looking forward to the nice weather this month for gardening.
Roberto Amigo, also with EPA, here to support the agency and any on public involvement, including with the HAB. I'm looking forward to this month is cycling with all the weather that we're having.
I'm Ted Parsons, representing the public at large.
Susan Coleman, representing public at large.
Anything coming up this one?
No.
Jim Doherty, Oregon Hanford Cleanup Board, and I finally got all my cows shipped to the hills, so I get to spend a lot of time with a bedroll and my pony in the mountains, so. What is that?
Colleen Drinker with Information Integration Solutions with DOE. And I'm looking forward to my garden too, having tomatoes, kind of a tomato smell. Laura Caulfield, Cat9, I support DOE. And just looking forward to the world of interest DOE DDFO. My oldest is running for his first ASB thingy this year in middle school, so that we find out on Thursday. So I'm looking forward to that.
Sutton, local environmental interest. I'm not looking forward to anything particular in June, but in July, on my side of the family, we'll have a family reunion at my sister's house in Albuquerque. And that'll be an interesting place to have it.
So that's everyone in the room who want to volunteer. Go down the list of the team's participants and as I see them. And you have a chance to open your microphone and answer any questions. We'll start with Alfonso if you're available. And Annie Gristle.
Ann Alvarez, Department of Ecology. I represent ecology and the communications team for the nuclear waste program. And I'm just looking forward for summer in general. See if I get a nice little tan or something.
That is Gabe.
Hey, Bonnie, Nez Perce Tribe, and it's summertime, so just a lot of cultural activities going on.
Dana.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hello, I'm Dana Cowley with HMS Communications, and my height of the summer is I think we're going to go up to Glacier and do that Sunshine Highway Drive, and I'm very grateful for that opportunity. Thank you.
Next up we have Morgan.
Morgan Johnson, Ecology Environmental Restoration Team, and my baby is turning 18 at the end of this month.
And next is Kevin.
Yes, this is Kevin Danby representing Grant and Franklin County. I have an interest in the 324 building. I missed this morning's meeting because I'm on the Freda Chamber of Commerce board and we're having our annual music festival weekend after this coming. And then in the latter part of July, looking forward to spending several days up on Lopez Island in the San Juans.
Next we have Jane.
I'm Jane LePage with the Department of Health. Yeah, I'm interested in the 324 building. And I just got back from vacation, so I'm actually looking forward to resting up and planning the next vacation.
Next up we have Lee.
Hi, I'm Li Wang. I'm with Yakima Nation ERWM. I'm interested in the 324 building information. I'm not a member. Thank you.
Matthew.
Matthew Campbell, CTUIR alternate, and looking forward to spending time in the garden this summer.
And Mia.
Hello, Mia Burke, Hanford Challenge. I'm going to DC next week for lobbying about Hanford issues. And then my aunt lives there, so seeing her as well. So that's something I'm looking forward to.
So we have Rob Arnold.
Yes, Rob Harmley, HAB non-union, non-management representative. And this summer, I'm making my annual out of the country trip. I'm going to Taiwan for 3 weeks.
Next on the list is Tom Rogers. His microphone's dead, but we did note he has been most speechless by our conversations. Then the last one on teams that I see is Simone.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to hear more about 324 building and looking forward to the Lamprey celebration down in Oregon City later this month.
Had a couple people join us. Pam, do you want to let us know who you are, why you're here, and what you're doing this month?
Okay, I'm Pam Larson. I represent Benton County on the Hanford Advisory Board. Very interested in engaging at the 324 building because it is very close to the border, northern border of the city of Richland. This month, nothing too exciting, but in September, my husband and I are going to Fiji for a week because he is a scuba diver and we are going with other scuba divers. I'm snorkel.
Rebecca, like to introduce yourself, say what you're looking forward to today and what you're looking forward to this month.
Okay, I'm Rebecca Holland. I represent Hamtech. I'm looking forward to just the discussion about 324 also, especially since I work there. And this month, well, my daughter has a birthday in 2 days, so I'm celebrating that.
Is there anybody I missed that would like to volunteer an answer?
Gosh, if you want me to, I can introduce myself. I'm Patrick Conrad, HMS, here to support the HAB and looking forward to summer vacations, including one next week.
I think that rounds it out.
Excellent. Thanks everybody for playing along. So I guess this meeting on the agenda has a lot of me talking, and I'm going to try to avoid doing that as much as possible. But I was the IM team lead on the advice, so I'll be talking through that. If that passes through committee today, it'll go to the August board meeting. And along with this advice at the August board meeting, I hope to see a whole bunch of people's tomatoes because you'll have extra and they will be ripe and delicious by then. Okay. Not that I want you to throw rotten tomatoes, only if they're actually ripe. Okay. So Josh, can you throw the words on the screen, or do you want me to? There we go. So the IM team met after the committee of the whole to do some work on this, and it turned out that the advice wasn't geared towards the proposed plan specifically. We didn't take a position on which proposed plan alternative was favored, just that we wanted something done. And then gave some high-level advice on what sort of best practices would be whichever decision was made. So we're really advising the agencies on things they should include in their removal or remedial action work plans, their waste management plans, and their health and safety plans for the waste site and the building over it. We definitely want something done because it's a critical site that we not critical in the wrong sense of the word, but a critical cleanup activity that is important to the board. So what I'm going to ask everyone to do is, if you were not on the issue manager team and you have anything in the advice that you read through as part of your packet that you can't support, you can't live with, let's talk through it now. And then once we get past that phase, then we'll go to the wordsmithing and like grammar And everyone can participate in that, even IM team members. But first, we start with the folks who haven't already consented to pass this through. So first, I guess, are there questions on sort of the gist of the advice? Do you understand the concepts? And then is there anything that really gives people heartburn?
Any questions from anyone in the room?
Tom, could you scroll through that so we can? It's you, Josh, sorry.
Yeah, about this, I'll give a handout at the front of the room if this is your first exposure.
I thought during the last meeting where most people said for the uncoupled option. And that's what DOE was asking for, is give us advice on the coupled or uncoupled.
There were a number of people who preferred the coupled option, but there were a couple that did not. That's why it steered more towards a practical advice on the actual doing the work and best practices. And I don't know that DOE actually asked for advice on this one.
Any other questions, thoughts, comments?
Maybe scroll down a little more.
Well, gosh, you know, there's a lot of stuff in this that, you know, we do a lot of reminding them of things we've already done. I don't. Yeah, I felt that we were looking at the most expeditious way of getting this done. And that the uncoupled method allowed work to proceed at more cost effective and get it done earlier than later. And I saw that as being, when I saw the hands go up for the uncoupled, it certainly looked like a majority to me.
I don't disagree with you, and I feel like the majority of the folks who are on the IM team or at the committee of the whole probably agree. And those folks have the ability to put a comment in to that effect. But I don't think we had consensus on that, and consensus isn't a majority. Which is why why we pivoted a little bit.
All right, this is Chris speaking. To follow up a little bit on what Rob said, in the IM team meeting, I think as an IM team, we decided not to pick one of the various options. Either one were okay. But where a lot of the discussion went is IM team members, and maybe in the meeting before the IM team, there are a lot of concerns raised that had nothing to do with a specific option. Or they did have to do with a specific option, but they applied to both options. And these concerns are what Tom has presented, both in the advice section and in the introduction, the summary. But these are concerns that I think DOE has handled in every D&D or every D4, major D4 over the last 20 years, 30 years, whatever. They've taken down over 100 buildings in the 300 area. And according to what I've read online, over 900 buildings since 1990. They've addressed a lot of these concerns. But these concerns are likely to, if they're being raised by the HAB members, they're likely to be raised by public in a public comment period too. So we felt that maybe the agencies, tri-party agencies, could proactively maybe address some of these things if they updated either the remedial action work plan or the removal action work plan, or both, each of which are dated documents. And neither of those documents, for example, is specific to the uncoupled option, and might be outdated for the coupled option in various regards too. So we felt that instead of focusing on you should do this or you should do that in the D4, focus on updating the work plans or removal action work plan or remedial action work plan that are going to have to be, that should be revised, updated certainly. And in doing that, you could make sure that some of these concerns are put in there, and that would go a long way toward maybe alleviating public heartburn, or they'd go a long way toward proactively answering comments that might come up from the public. So that's kind of why the document has the form it has, and the content that it has. Is that how you understand it, Tom?
Yeah, that's the way I think things broke. So understand that some folks feel strongly with one option over another, and since this advice is actually going to be coming in, if it passes in August, will be coming in after the comment period anyway. So we all have the opportunity to put in our preference in the comment period individually. Matthew.
Hey, Tom. Overall, this looks good. I like how the advice sections encourage basically community collaboration in response to comments and worker safety, while acknowledging that there are multiple options on the table. I think when I was looking through it in the first paragraph on background, the sentence, there was something that's not worded right, not background, sorry. This, the second main paragraph, the 2006 removal action, that particular sentence, something's not right with the grammar, I think. Everything else seemed to flow pretty smoothly.
Oh yeah, just our high level documents.
Yeah.
The curse of redlining.
All right, that's all I got right now.
Okay, so we are officially on to wordsmithing, it sounds like. So jump into queue. Mia, you're next.
Hi, yeah, do we just want to start at the top and go like paragraph by paragraph?
Sounds
Maybe.
like a plan.
Okay. I'm trying to see, because some of this got changed from whatever version I last had, but the paragraph that starts "the HAB has long held." In the sentence, "this advice to the TPA agencies," I suggest changing the wording "is independent of the selected remedy" to "this advice to the TPA agencies does not choose one of the remedies." So it's more clear. One of the remedies, as both options will result in the removal of contamination and reduction of risk. In the removal, yeah. And then the sentence that starts "solutions to these concerns," that needs more context. Because we're not saying any concerns. I don't know if this was taken from below when we were editing in the IM team.
Yeah, I bet it was. Maybe just solutions to the concerns below.
Okay.
There's some change on the screen. Is everyone okay with what they're seeing so far? Think so.
And I think that's it for that section. I don't know if anybody has something else. I have edits in the bullets.
An edit to the very top on the addressees. Instead of Dave Enian, it would be Laura Bulow.
Can you spell that for me?
For Laura, oh, sorry, for Bulow, Buellow.
Is that transition happening?
It's in the process.
Is she acting or permanent? So Dave retires at the end of next week.
Yeah.
And at that time, I think it'll be official. We'll have to change our IMF representative over to Laura as well as our, with the executive committee
Yeah,
representative. Yeah, to Laura.
but if I see what we can.
Any other thoughts or changes on these first couple paragraphs?
I had one on the sentence that Matthew brought up on the removal action work plan, remedial action work plan. So they weren't, I wouldn't say that those are developed for the 300 area record of decision. That's kind of strange wording. The removal action work plan covers the buildings, and then the remedial action work plan covered the soil and groundwater implementation of the ROD. So I don't know if it's easier just to say that those two documents, you know, in conjunction with the 300 area ROD are high level documents or something more broad, maybe.
What does the committee think of that?
Appreciate that contextual edit.
Anything else in this first couple paragraphs? Deliberate and move on. Matthew Campbell and then Chris. Matthew, go ahead.
Okay, on the first sentence in the second paragraph, the HAB has long held a bias. Like, I wonder if it'd be better to use another word instead of bias. I'm not saying to remove it. I'm just saying maybe something would sound better.
Maybe the board has long advocated for action.
That sounds way better. Thank you.
Chris, you have something?
Right, I have two edits or suggestions for edits in the background paragraph. In the sentence starting in 2022 as the final stages of structural supports. Structural supports for what? We don't know what they are, but if someone who wasn't intimately familiar with it, they might not know what we're talking about. And when we say structural supports.
Chris,
And then also,
can I ask you to hold the background, because I know Mia has bullets, so we're going top down. So let's get to the bullets first, and then we'll get to background, if that's okay. All right. Anyone else on the text before the bullets in the executive summary? Okay, bullets, Mia.
Okay, first bullet, change is updating to updates. So when DOE updates the site specific plans. And then I think we'll want to put the P's in proposed plan in capital because it's an official document. Yeah, cool. That was cool. And then under the 6th bullet, use lessons learned. Spread. I suggest changing, so it would read, airborne soils and contamination spread as well as extreme temperatures instead of the heat and cold. So as well as extreme temperatures and other environmental conditions.
Okay, so did I hear changing this to as well as less damage?
Get rid of heat and cold, yeah.
Yeah. And on the last bullet, should read ensure protectiveness of human health and the environment. So delete to, protectiveness to, and change it to of. And that's all I have for the bullet points.
Becca has some more.
Did you call me?
So, and then.
Oh, okay, all right. I'm just wondering about bullet number 3, what, the reasoning is for that. Avoid using clean soil to avoid fill and compact debris being disposed of.
I have concerns with that too.
Yeah, I'm wondering, maybe you can give me some background on that, because I don't know that I agree with that.
When there was a lot of remediation going on the site, clean soil was dug up to get to contamination underneath. And, so, but I mean, the major part of remediation is done. So I think it's an old reference.
So-
I don't think it's the line.
So the reason that's in there comes from the 2019 Committee of the Whole discussion, going back a little bit, where EPA raised concerns that ERDF was being filled with clean soil instead of using the space for contaminated soil, for compaction. The remediation for the site is nowhere near done. There's plenty of soils that are dirty that could be dug up, that have records of decision. And that dirty dirt balance is something that has been incorporated into a bunch of advice. So I'm not like saying that that's a hill I'm going to die on, but that's why it's in there, is because there's remediation to do, and it's just something we've been trying to advocate for, is to use dirty dirt to the extent practicable in ERDF.
So this is specifically speaking about ERDF, not
Yeah.
using,
Yeah,
not
so
using
when,
clean soil at 324 to help
No.
shield.
no,
dirt.
it's when you bring the building debris to ERDF, use contaminated soil to void fill and compact that building debris,
Okay.
instead of using
Yeah,
clean
'cause
dirt.
it's- I guess it wasn't real clear to me, like the way that it's, I don't know if there's a different way to write that, but.
What if we just
I
added
read it
building
as,
debris?
don't use clean dirt to shield the, the dirt that you're digging out of 324. I
Okay,
believe they're gonna have to do some of that.
yeah.
Yeah, I have a question on the 6th bullet also. And questions to Becky. Becky, does 324 building have a building specific health and safety plan asked?
Yes.
Okay, then I think that 6th bullet, we might say, use lessons learned from the covered excavation operations to Hanford site and elsewhere in the complex to ensure that the 324 building health and safety plan. So we make it specific to that building and not general. If that's all right with you.
Yeah, no, I think that's good, because the health and safety plan will have to be will have to be edited,
Right.
of course, you know, for the school projects.
For bullet 3, did the addition of building debris, can I clarify that for everyone?
$324 building debris.
Does
it still not make sense?
No, it does not. So that was my concern right there. The way I read it, the way it's written right now is it's saying, don't use clean dirt. On the stuff that you're digging up. That's the way that I read it. I could be, reading too much into it, but if it's meant for ERDF, this is supposed to be about 324. If what you're saying is don't use clean dirt in ERDF, it doesn't really fit here.
Yeah, when they put building, when they demolish 324, they're gonna take all that debris, 324 debris, and they're gonna put it in ERDF. Okay, when they put it in ERDF, you don't want void space, and you wanna try and compact that debris, but especially you don't want void space. And so to do that, you put soil on top of the debris again. And we want that to be, not to be clean soil to the extent possible.
Right, but isn't this about 324 building?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what we're saying here is we're telling them what to do at ERDF once we've cleaned up 324. What I'm saying is I don't believe that it has a place in this advice. If we want to give advice to ERDF about how they dispose of 324 waste.
Well, that's a good point, but we wandered off. And elsewhere, we're talking about disposal of the contaminated soil. Okay, is it high level waste are the issues? So we're not just talking about digging it up, we're also talking about disposal of it. So we're talking about disposal of the debris too. So there's 2 disposal options, one for the soil that we're talking about, and there's concerns about that. And then there's concerns about disposal of the debris. I mean, they're both the same, just one's soil and one's the building.
Yeah.
And if we don't want to talk about disposal of the building, then maybe we don't want to talk about disposal of the soil.
Well, isn't it good practice? Isn't it good practice to use dirty, contaminated soils to fill in if we've got them available?
Right.
Okay, so this sounds like a good practice, not a concern. Okay, we should say we recommend you have the following good practices.
That's fine.
Avoid using clean soil where, on the top, or use all the lessons learned, or, all these things are not necessarily concerns. We don't even say, do it under budget and the cost effective and the fast as you can. We don't say that in here at all.
I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think
I get
people get what I'm saying, it's more a recommended practice. So why don't we just say, follow the recommended practices that we've already established and then list them, use the dirt, go, revise the documents, et cetera, because that's what we want them to do.
Yeah.
I would kind of chime in and say the same thing. Number 3 and number 4 are kind of similar to this anyway. The title is Path Forward for Building Removal and Remediation, not Waste Disposal. So number 3 and number 4 are kind of outside the purview of what we stated this document is to be. Right?
That's a good point. And I'm wondering if we don't want to change the title here because that's in my remediation world head, building removal and soil remediation includes disposition of the materials. So
Yeah,
if that needs to be spelled out, specifically in the title, then that might be an easy fix to that.
But things like classifying all the waste, that's kind of, you know, a little bit too much on the nose. It has to be classified as a waste before they have to bury it. Why restate the obvious that they're going to do anyway? Are they going to bury waste that's not classified out there? Do we need to, because there's a whole bunch of things like that. Same thing with 3. You know, this is EDF activities. That's a whole different thing.
The classify the waste bullets. The classify the waste bullet was modified. It was originally due a waste incidental reprocessing evaluation on the soils. So it got modified to be more generic because there's more than just those contaminated soils that need to get classified. Yeah.
That's my comment.
I want to check in with Matthew. Is your comment on this bullet or is it not different?
My comment is on bullet number 3.
Okay, what are your thoughts here?
Okay, can I go? Or
Yeah, go ahead.
okay. Rather than using avoid using clean soil, it might be better to say something to the effect of prioritize using contaminated soil. Tell them what we would like them to do rather than what we don't want them to do. It's
But I
usually
think what,
go ahead.
I think the big thing is that's how ERDF runs anyway, right? So we're telling them to do what they're supposed to do. You know, what their work plans tell them what to do and all that. So you're kind of like telling your kid, you know,
Same thing with,
I taught you how to do something. Now I want you to go do it that way. It's, to me, it's double.
So is there any value added having that bullet in there at all?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Go. So I don't want to interfere with the discussion. It's very interesting for us to hear. We do have concerns still. EPA does, that DOE continues to use clean fill for ERDF when we wish that they were digging up more soils and doing more remediation to meet the needs of ERDF. And also because the point of ERDF is supposed to be for disposal of that contaminated soil, not filling it up with all this clean material. We need the clean material for elsewhere. So it continues to be an issue. And I appreciate the advice, but if the HAB doesn't agree with that advice, absolutely, you know, it's up to you guys to make that call. So.
But I think when you're talking about, you know, they can go dig up this, you know, waste site and then we'll use that dirt. Well, that's totally separate from what this contractor's doing or what their budget tells them. So you're not always gonna have the dirty dirt to use. It's easier to go get the clean fill than it is to try to clean up a waste site.
And that's why they'll continue.
Right.
It incentivizes bad behavior.
And we're not saying. And we're not saying you have to do that. We're just saying, you know, you should prioritize it if it's available. You know, get the low hanging fruit. There's a couple different operable units that have records of decision and work plans in place that could get some dirty dirt in there. It's advice. It's not an edict. But if there's folks who can't live with it, then that's a different story. So I guess that's the question: is can you live with it, or should we reword it, or how do we want to handle this one bullet?
Rebecca, would this impact your support if it was included?
Yeah, again, and I hear, you know, what you're saying. Maybe that's a place for us to do a whole nother piece of advice about how ERDF is, you know, compacting waste, because it's not just 324 building waste.
No.
It's everywhere across the site. So maybe that's it's a bigger picture. I think here I would really prefer that it, just me speaking, that it focuses on the 324 building. And if they are using practices at ERDF that are questionable, then maybe that's, maybe where we should formulate another piece of advice. This to me, it's confusing the way that I read it. It's kind of like, well, we really want this 324 building. There's all these, plans and a ROD amendment and all this kind of stuff. And then we start talking about how they're gonna fill in ERDA. And I just feel like it doesn't have a place in there.
And classified waste building. Fit.
Yeah.
Fits.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're on 3 and the call is to cut it. Right?
I agree.
I just want to make this point though. I haven't seen the remedial action work plan that was written for the previous ROD, but I have read in detail the removal action work plan. And in the removal action work plan, there's incorporated in it is a waste management plan. And that waste management plan goes into detail on where the waste is going to go, a lot of the issues. So the waste management plan is a big part of the removal action work plan. So if we're gonna say update the removal action work plan, and part of that is updating within there the waste management plan.
And that's in there.
The
We
waste
have it on.
management plan on what to do with the waste is not a separate thing from the removal action work plan.
Yeah,
It's
but the waste
embedded.
so the waste management plan is where the waste goes, not necessarily how the waste goes there once it's there. So I think Becky has a good point, and we should consider advice on ERDIP specifically. It's a bigger topic and a bigger discussion, and in the interest of keeping consensus, let's strike this bullet. And then Ed, you have heartburn about classify all the wastes. There was a lot of energy about that, so I want to make sure we have that conversation separately.
Just reading it here, I'm just like, so do your job is what I read that as. So why not, Tom, provide health and safety, do the right thing with transportation. It's just one of those things that to me stands out, classify the waste. Well, they're gonna classify the waste before they bury it there. So why are we telling them to do something that they're already on? What's new about that statement? It's kind of in the same vein of 3. I mean, it doesn't hurt anything, but it's just not, it's a distracting.
I'd take the point that almost all HAB advice boils down to do your job. And it doesn't make it not important. If folks on the IM team were concerned about this, that's what Chris was talking about earlier, that it would sort of give the agencies a heads up that the public is probably concerned about this too. And so we're reminding them of things that we're concerned about. But I get your point too, for sure.
Yeah, I'm just looking at who's the recipient of this. And they already know this. What are we adding to it by just saying that?
Yeah,
I mean, I'll go along with consensus, but I just look at that and say, sure. How do you expect them to respond to that?
They can respond. Absolutely, we will make sure that the material is acceptable at the waste disposal facility, and I think that's a response. That's a response we could accept.
Well, why don't we say something like use waste classifications to assure that you're going to be meeting the waste criteria? Use waste classifications to assure you're putting it in the right spot.
What do you think, Tom?
So what you want to do is emphasize a stronger focus on the waste classification criteria, waste acceptance criteria.
Well, the other piece is the appropriate regulatory tools. That is referencing if there's potential high level waste, that would be a waste incident on the reprocessing evaluation. So that's the other piece of this topic. Ensure the waste acceptance criteria are.
That's what I heard Rob propose.
Yeah, it's just remove all the other stuff, just say use waste classifications. Okay,
Or waste classifications and other regulatory tools.
Yes.
and regulatory tools. There we go.
They're just gonna follow the line. All they're gonna do.
And is it waste acceptance criteria is met or are met?
How many there are? We'll go for- Oh, the same criteria, that's plural, the criteria would be single, so, right? Okay, so I do kind of want to check on Q. Was your hand raised earlier for bullet 4?
I'm sorry?
Was your hand raised earlier for bullet 4?
Yes.
And Matthew, did you have something else to cover outside of the bullet 3?
Yeah, bullet 3 was removed. So at this point, I think the ERDF piece is fine. I guess my comment on that was there's a fair amount of waste area sites that haven't been classified that could provide the contaminated soil for ERDF void filling. And because they aren't classified, that particular source isn't available. In regards to classifying all the wastes, when it comes to the 324 building and the wastes that are there and some of the tribal concerns in regards to the level of waste as well as being close to the river, keeping that in there, I think, is a good thing. That's all I got.
So I think next up in that case is Mia.
Sorry, I think I might have just said that while muted. What if we add in, so we say use waste classifications and other regulatory tools to assure that the building materials and contaminated soils meet the waste acceptance criteria. Yeah, we don't need other.
What was that?
So take off the other. So it's just building materials and contaminated soils meet the waste acceptance criteria.
Say 324 building.
Okay. So assure the 324 building materials and contaminated soils meet the waste acceptance criteria. That's specific. Okay, Ed, you good with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Anything on more? We got 2 more bullets. Anyone else that have it? Choose with them? Sorry. Can't speak.
I think Mia, do we still on queue?
Tom fixed my issue, so we're good.
Perfect. Anything else that would like edited for the bullets? I think we're good in the room. Say hands online. I think we're maybe ready to move on to the bathroom.
All right, and we know Chris had some stuff in the background, so let's get there.
Yeah, 2 things. The sentence starting in 2022. As the final stages of structural supports were being installed, structural supports just comes out of the blue. And I'm wondering, should there be some kind of explanation of what we mean by structural supports?
How about just basically the final stages of preparation? That's what it was.
Okay, and then the next line below, it goes
Well,
outside
we
the
need to
reach.
change. We need to change as doesn't work anymore. So in 2022, during the final stages of instead of as, it would be during the final stages of preparation. Works. What's next, Chris?
in the next sentence, outside the reach. Again, that just comes out of the blue, reach of what? So that needs to be reworded or changed a little bit.
How about just leave it without it? You're now explaining the reason why, it's just.
Happy to say outside.
How about
previously designed.
Outside the capabilities of the previously
Well, we
designed
just
remedy.
say a previously unknown area of contamination was identified.
Yes. And we're called to.
So that would be instead of an additional area,
Yeah,
a previously unknown area.
Bear with me while I type.
Technically, we could say volume. Very.
Yeah, we're keeping in this case, we're keeping the last fit outside the design, or outside the previously designed remedy.
What do you think, Chris?
It said outside the capability.
Okay, instead of
All right,
reach, we'll change it to capability.
we could say not taken into account by the previously designed remedy.
Yeah, I think it's important to mention that the previous remedy would not be able to address this, and that's the sort of.
Or just say not addressed by the previously designed remedy.
Our presentation, last presentation on the 324, just said it was out of the reach of the excavator.
Yeah, the remote manipulator arms.
Any ideas and thoughts on the sentence?
I have thoughts on this whole paragraph, but for this sentence, we're using previously twice. Can we say the currently designed remedy or current remedy? So we don't use previously twice in the same sentence? Does that still get to the gist of it?
Yeah,
Why does it say outside of the reach of the excavator?
yeah, of the remote excavator. Instead of the currently designed remedy. Yeah, of the remote excavator.
We're pleased with the sentence as it is.
Yeah, that's good.
Some pondering, some head nods. I think we're okay here.
Josh, can you remove the comma between identified and outside, please?
Thanks. So yeah, where else in this paragraph would you like to see some changes?
So starting with the sentence during a 1980s project, 1980s project to vitrify instead of vitrifying, to vitrify tank waste, which had, and then we can delete additional since it's had strontium 90 and or cesium added to it to simulate tank waste, comma, the highly, so this is deleting a release of the highly radioactive liquid spilled on the floor of hot cell B. Spilled on the floor.
I'll just say B set.
Yeah, that works too. Okay. Sorry, I'm just reading through to see if there was anything else. I think that's it for me.
That was in the first paragraph background, or are we all satisfied with what we're saying here?
Yeah, we're focusing here on the 324, which is good.
Sounds like we're in agreement. We can move to paragraph 2.
Can you scroll back down? I'm still trying to read it, with the changes. So I'm confused about that because are we saying that they added more strontium and more cesium already to the tank waste? Because the tank waste has strontium and cesium in it.
That's that they took a- that a B plant and have cesium taken out, and then added cesium and strontium that met the specs for the German logs to be enough.
They added the cesium and strontium to the log so that the test would reflect what would happen if the Germans did that. Is that right?
Yep.
So either, I can't remember which one was which. Cesium or the strontium, one of them came from the cesium strontium capsules. The other one, I think Tom said it, but I think it came out of B plant residuals that were then treated and concentrated for this purpose.
Right.
That's
So it does read a little strange. I'm not exactly sure that it was added to tank
Yeah,
waste.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's like they added cesium and strontium to tank waste. It doesn't, yeah, it just kind of doesn't really,
It's just explaining why it's so extremely hot.
right? But it doesn't, it's not really correctly, it's not, the way it's worded isn't really correct. I would just say something about high levels of cesium and strontium.
Yeah, it's probably, otherwise you're gonna start talking about the experiment.
Right.
The reason why they did it, and et cetera. So, yeah. High levels of cesium percentage.
Finding research involving highly radioactive materials, including strontium 90 and cesium 137.
Yeah, that works. The reason that it's called out separately is because it was basically pure cesium and strontium that was spilled, which makes this so obviously you know that it's why that's so dangerous. It's not tank waste that's contaminating the soil. It's high levels of cesium and strontium.
Right.
So it's separate. That's yeah. It's hard to read within the red line too. But
Simplify that help.
I would just say waste, to vitrify waste. I wouldn't say tank waste.
Radioactive waste.
Or yeah,
to vitrify radioactive waste.
yeah. That's strontium 90 and.
Now we have two radioactives.
Yeah, that have to be changed. To vitrify highly radioactive waste, then you get rid of the highly radioactive.
project to vitrify highly reactive waste, that's not the MC and or cesium at to incinerator highland waste, the liquid spilled on the floor of the so.
That's good.
I can live with that.
Close enough.
Going back to the in 2022 sentence. I want to add soil, so a previously unknown area of soil contamination. Okay. Anyone else have anything for this paragraph?
Okay, focus on usability.
Okay, quiet. Sounds like people are almost content.
Oh, no, I believe both those placeholders may be able to be filled now. I think they both went in the AR this morning. I did see that. Well, not an amended rod, but the FFS, you won't have a placeholder for reference. 6, unless you're just gonna put the previous rod. Is that what the intent is there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, the FFS went, I think, this morning into the AR.
We're gonna seek that out, fix that before it goes to the board.
Yeah, and we should maybe clarify that that reference 6 placeholder is for the proposed plan, not for the ROD amendment.
Okay. Yeah, the proposed plan also should be in the AR too.
Of a proposed plan to amend the 2013 ROD.
Got what you're looking for?
So,
That sort of things.
yeah, in that sentence, the initial start of the sentence, DOE and EPA, comma, get rid of the hyphen, lead regulatory agents of the project, comma, get rid of the hyphen. Very.
It should be singular agency.
Should do a quick time check. Our first break would have been scheduled, or is scheduled at 2:30, about 5 minutes until that point. Do you want to make some agenda adjustments to give us a bit more time?
Let's see where we get. I mean, I think we're pretty fluid towards the end of the day. So this is, let's plan on having elections at 3:45 and everything else we can sort of fudge.
I think we're ready to move on to paragraph 2 of the back.
Mia.
Okay, so proposed plan in the first sentence needs to be capitalized. And then the second sentence, the coupled remedy portion, I'm gonna drop something in chat. I don't think this really describes it accurately. I mean, it describes part of it, but not the whole thing. So, Josh, I'm dropping in chat what would be like a rewrite of that sentence.
And I've already done so. That reads, the coupled remedy would rely on the shielding of the building to remove the high activity contaminated soils that the equipment can reach, then demolish the building, and then an enclosure to reach the rest of the contaminated soils.
They both say coupled. Oh, okay. Aging, yeah. These are the same thing.
And then at first was slightly big, but not much.
let's say this remedy, instead of the coupled remedy again. So can we add where that, right after that, where it says the coupled remedy? Just say
This option
remedy,
would,
this remedy or this option?
I have another.
Go ahead.
So it starts while the board advocates for action. There is no consensus, there is not.
Rebecca.
Where it says while the preferred option is potentially less expensive, whose preferred option?
I'll DOE's. Yeah.
So I think we should say, well, DOE's preferred option.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, 3 years is more than slightly faster.
Yeah, 4 years.
4 years, yeah. I, the project scale, I wouldn't minimize how much faster it's gonna be.
That's a question I had. Do we want to be a little bit more specific when we say less expensive and a few years faster? Say approximately $200 million less expensive and 4 years faster, or not?
I don't think 4 years is that fast in Hanford cleanup time.
It's 4 years. Every
5 years.
So, is there any changes to make here then?
Do we want to get rid of slightly?
Yes.
I heard some yeses.
It could be the entire administration.
Yes, get rid of slightly.
Satisfied with that? What else do you have?
For the decoupled option sentence, the decoupled option would be to remove. I think we can remove B2. Or sorry, would remove the building.
Yep.
And then Josh, I just have a question for you. There's the spacing in this is all wonky in terms of some sentences have double space and after the period and some have single or one space or two spaces. Do you go through and make that all right in the end?
Yeah, I think we started out with all two spaces and over the course of these changes, those spaces have been lost.
I'm
Okay.
old.
So they don't distract us.
Okay, are we at the page, are we past the page break or are we still on this paragraph?
Feel like they're still reading it. I'm not saying any hands up. We're ready to move on?
Yes.
Okay. Right, final paragraph at the back. List thoughts.
Is that supposed to be environmental response? Comprehensive environmental response.
Yeah, circle.
Oh, okay.
That says that the DOE takes the position that the contamination is high activity waste. Should that be high level?
No. Because high
But
level
what
waste,
do you,
so the question is, DOE is saying that it's high activity waste, but low level waste. And others have suggested that it's high level waste as well as high activity waste. High level waste cannot go to ERDF. Activity waste potentially can, depending as it meets the waste acceptance criteria. So that's why we're sort of not taking positions here, because that's going to be a very challenging position to take. But we are just saying, you know, characterize it and make sure it goes where it's supposed to go. And have a backup plan just in case it becomes just in case there's a determination later that it's high level waste, have a backup plan so it's not, you can still get the stuff dug up. That's where the, I think it was the 5th bullet point came from, which is have a backup plan for interim storage.
So I have another comment about they also note potential exists or may be unanticipated materials, which would have a disposal pathway. We have which would in there twice. Which could assay and which would. I just wonder.
You could say
Which could.
which would be disposed the way. So could assay as mixed yeah, which would be disposed at the waste isolation pilot plant.
Is that what I heard?
No. Oh, that's not what I was talking about. There may be unanticipated materials which could assay as mixed transuranic waste, which could be disposed at the waste isolation plant.
So is the concern about which repeats?
Yeah, or, yeah. Change one of those, which could assay, or you change that to say that may assay.
If it could assay as mixed transuranic waste, it would then need to be disposed, or would then require disposal at.
You know, why don't we just go and say that they wouldn't meet the final disposal requirements and another decision needs to be made? You know, you and I, we all know that Carlsbad is probably the only place, but you know, I think everybody else knows it too. It's gonna change the plan. And that's what the concern is. Additional uncertainty is based upon the nature of contamination. And so that's the most powerful part of it. And it would fit in the circle of landfill.
Does that?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I see is really make it more powerful. You're gonna have to develop a new plan.
Someone has a suggested way to word this?
Your audio is starting to break up a bit. I don't know if it's just me, but is the suggestion that we get rid of those 3 lines?
Yes. And if you want to replace it, you say that it cannot be disposed of in the circular landfill. That's what you're saying.
So let's, instead of typing that. Um, uh, say, let's start with DOE also note. So instead of they, let's change that to DOE also notes that the potential exists that there may be unanticipated materials which could assay as mid-transgenic waste, period.
That's,
Yeah, and then we could,
Then he's the
Yeah, then-
next one, he's another concern, yes.
then we could say there are also persistent questions.
everybody changes this selection result.
Also,
People said.
What are you doing? I can't hear.
I just asked it with those changes, is this selection resolved?
I'm okay with it.
I think with that, we're ready to move on to Mia's edits. Thank you for your patience.
hold on,
No,
you've got two sentences doing the same thing, basically, starting with alsos. So
No.
I would take the sentence starting with there are, I would do, in addition, there are persistent questions.
thumbs up, Matthew. Say one. Okay, I think Mia, you're up.
So I think we can clean up the sentence DOE also notes even more. DOE also notes that there may be unanticipated materials. I don't think we need the potential exists. I think you can get rid, notes that there may be, yeah, there may, yep. The first sentence, additional uncertainty, there is additional uncertainty based on the nature. So there is, at the beginning of the sentence, there is additional uncertainty based on. And then, in addition, there are persistent questions as to whether some material, so not whether or not, just whether. And I think that's it for me.
Your thoughts on this final background paragraph?
Okay.
Hold on, the
Question
last,
now, do we
the
take
last-
a, sorry,
the last sentence, this question, is this just referring to the potential for high level waste?
yes,
Because we have two questions, potential questions, whether it's transuranic or high level. So we need to clarify that, the beginning of that sentence.
The question of,
the question of high level waste.
I'm saying the second question,
Okay. It is 2:40. We want to take a 10-minute break and come back and polish the last bit of advice, which is mostly a repeat of the executive summary? Or do we want to blast through it and then take a break? Anyone have strong opinions?
Get it done.
Okay, let's get it done.
Nice. Any thoughts on this first paragraph?
The last sentence in the first paragraph is kind of weak. I think it needs to be strengthened in some fashion. Maybe say the board's advice is to develop site-specific blah, 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 and is regarding. We need to strengthen that in some manner.
Develop or update. And then you can get rid of updated.
Can we just generalize all of these into one? The board advice regarding the development is, basically the board recommends that you develop the documentation to support this. That's what you're asking, right?
Do you think, Tom?
Let me say that again.
Yeah, I mean, we just say develop site-specific plans to complete the work safely and effectively. Does that say the same thing?
Well, it's not just site-specific. I think in some way we'd like to say proposed plan option specific.
I mean, we could do a parenthetical after site-specific plans and just list those three. Trying to make both Chris and Rob happy.
Where do you want the parenthetical? Perfect.
Yeah.
Josh, you can
Yeah.
remove the word updated before removal action work plan.
You like this as is?
And that parenthetical goes after plans.
Okay, either. If Rob like after effectively, prefers active plans. Yeah, you please do it like this, Rob? He's fine with that. Some of this first paragraph.
The third paragraph down, we need to that clause about ERDIF.
Sorry, what was that?
After PFP, or after plutonium finishing plant, we hit period and delete the rest. Oh, wait, no, sorry. To minimize piles of contaminated debris, period.
And Josh, you might just
Mia.
turn all this out. And you got it.
I'm on advice point 2, to change, so when updating the above plans, change above to aforementioned.
Okay. The waste determination delays classification, do we want to change that to match the executive summary? Or is this differently worded? Does that still work?
Yeah, still back to my same comment. Totally make, I mean,
Okay.
before disposal, you can't dispose until you have a classification for waste, so what are we trying to tell them?
Right. So let's take the bullet from the executive summary and put it here.
I'll see a second for a second. Right there where we were. Oh, is that just a total replacement?
It should say the board advises DOE to, and then, yeah, swap it out.
Else any changes or any other advice points?
Yeah, on the second advice point again, we advise DOE to use lessons learned from building demolition to minimize piles of contaminated debris. Can you really minimize piles of contaminated debris? And it is what it is. You have a building. The debris is going to be the building. How do you really minimize it?
Possibly they mean that you don't have lots of piles stacked around waiting to transport them. Right, so basically.
You can live load.
Yeah.
I think the appropriate term is optimize, not minimize.
Yeah, that works.
Optimizing files now. Any other thoughts on first 3 as edited or any of the other advice points?
What if we, sorry, going back, instead of optimize, what about manage? Because I don't know what optimizing piles means, but you're managing the piles.
We need piles
Well,
of,
yeah, they're.
that just manage the contaminated.
They're containers, they put them in. And then, you know.
Yeah,
So
that
usually
works.
they're.
Get rid of the piles altogether. Perfect.
These lessons learned from building demolition across sites, as with the building finishing plant to manage the contaminated debris. Say some head nodding, I think we're good with that.
To expeditiously manage the contaminated debris?
Is that really needed? Sorry.
I mean, if we wanted to add something, we could say to manage contaminated debris and prevent a threat of contamination, but I don't know that that's,
I think it's short and sweet right now.
what do we think? Yeah, let's keep it short and sweet.
A thumbs up on change too.
The other thing that we changed up front was in the health and safety plan, adding 24 safety plan and get to extreme temperatures instead of heat cold.
Josh, it was also adding 324 building before health and safety plan in that first sentence.
Thank you. The other
And then
changes.
this last one we changed protectiveness of human health and the environment, right? For the last one.
Did we say
Yeah.
the public?
No,
Environment?
Josh, not there.
No.
The
The last advice point. Protectiveness of human health and the environment.
Annie has any comment?
On the paragraph that says the board advises DOE to develop and discuss with ecology a potential, that would be, it would probably include ecology, but it would probably be EPA as well.
I was gonna raise two.
Yeah, we would approve that first, but it might be an ecology facility if it was interesting.
All right, so
Which.
yeah, that's weird. I was thinking it would be it would be part of the rec.
EPA is the
So right there,
regulatory authority for this project.
so let's say with regulators.
No, I do. Writing my own advice seems a little odd.
And that last line, I would just say to isolate the material from the environment. Human sounds kind of odd. You're not really gonna isolate it from the environment.
That's strange.
Yeah.
I support the.
If something is in interim storage, it's not gonna be treated.
Yes, so
Potential for
the
interim
treatment
storage.
would be.
Yeah.
So
Away from
this
the river.
advice is doing, this advice point is doing two things. One is treating and separating out the potential transuranics. And the other is potentially storing high level waste if it becomes high level waste or it becomes determined to be high level waste. So that's why it's a treatment, storage, disposal, interim storage facility type place.
Any other thoughts on his last three?
So the treatment, yeah. Okay. Are we ready for this check?
Down, top, bottoms, or anything we missed, any concerns anyone has?
There will be an opportunity to, oh, Mia.
Yeah, sorry. I I was just reading through on the second to last one, the board advises DOE use lessons learned. This last sentence is a little wonky. DOE should work collaboratively with the workforce to ensure that facilities to manage environmental heat and cold stress.
Change that in the bullet.
That the
I think this was
facilities
different.
manage?
How did we phrase that up ahead in the bullet, Josh?
It wasn't in the top bullet.
No.
Yeah, this heat and cold stress was.
We changed that.
Right, but not facilities to manage heat and cold stress. So that's like changing rooms and
Bring temperatures and or other environmental.
We have that in there though.
and air conditioned break room type thing. So we could just swap out if we wanted to. That the extra facilities bit was for like basically comfort trailer type thing to give folks a chance to have a safe rest area.
Are you on the subject? You can go ahead, Matthew.
Okay, on that particular sentence as well on DOE should work collaboratively with the workforce, excuse me. Does DOE work directly with the workforce or do they work with the contractors?
They work with the contractors.
Okay, should that wording be adjusted or what do you think?
We could say DOE could assure contractors work with the workforce to blank, blank, blank.
Okay.
Isn't that this whole bullet a little bit redundant with the one above it? Could it be combined somewhere? Somehow?
Oh, the sentence above? Yeah.
Oh,
Could you delete the last sentence?
Not pretty badly.
I think it should be ensure. Oh, sure.
From the the changes so far, did that address your concern here?
The contractors will collaborate with the workforce,
Yeah,
not DOE.
not DOE. DOE can't do that.
Yeah. DOE should ensure
The contract.
contractor collaboration with the work collaborating.
Contractors collaborate with the workforce.
And if people remember that about 6 years ago, we were all treated with utility to go look at those big mechanical remote parts of the diggers. I think we went and watched the mock-ups.
The mock-up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mock-up facility. It was,
The remote
scoops.
manipulator.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we got to play with
Right,
it.
yeah,
So Thomas put in the chat that an alternative could be just to delete this last sentence.
yeah,
Is there a preference?
I don't like it. But it doesn't make any sense. I haven't held it for you,
That should be covered in that.
yeah.
Does that resolve your concern with that again?
Yeah, that works.
Okay. So I'll do another check. Is everyone willing to live with this advice as it has been edited?
The last one, if we may, again, we probably just need to shorten this down to monitoring well network is adequate to ensure protectiveness of the environment.
Human health and the environment definitely belongs to the monitoring well network.
I agree.
Yeah. So you're gonna take the human health out?
It sounds to me like that was the opposite of that. It's an important aspect when it comes to the monitoring well network.
Well monitoring is for environmental purposes only. Human health, occupational health on site is not the purview of the monitoring network, well network. That's environmental. We should just make that clear. There you go.
Yeah, we don't do that because we monitor for whether the groundwater will meet the maximum contaminant limits, right, which are drinking water standards. So it's also a human health protection.
But the environmental.
Yeah,
Right,
that's
it's not.
monitor well network. Monitor well networks are designed to protect human health and the environment. So I'm pretty strong. I feel pretty strongly human health belongs there.
Agreed.
Okay. Say that again.
I was just gonna say, if you remember our presentation on it, they had actually taken and they have 3 wells that are monitoring, 1 upstream and 2 downstream. And they've been monitoring on. And so we're just saying here to encourage you to continue to monitor, protect so you do what you gotta do. As opposed to, monitoring and people drinking water. Nobody's drinking that water.
Well, I think what we're saying here is that as you excavate soil, is there a possibility that you may remobilize or mobilize contamination such that 2 existing wells are no longer adequate? That the mobilization of kind of goes a little bit different. Groundwater takes a slightly different flow path. So it's changed conditions when in the possible mobilization of contamination. You may need to have another well or so.
Especially if there's water.
2 may not be
to do dust suppression.
Contamination mobilized and takes a little different flow path.
Like I said in our last presentation on it, they weren't planning on sinking anymore.
The main change suggested, it sounds to me like human health inclusion is important to a couple seats. Everyone live with it.
And I disagree. Because the whole point of the environmental monitoring, the key pathway of interest is through the human health. So it's already included in the environmental analysis via the well monitoring system. That well monitoring system is not built to monitor human health on site. If that's what we're trying to do, that's a whole different approach to what the well monitoring system is. That's not included.
Ed, when you're evaluating compliance with CERCLA and RCRA, you're evaluating groundwater to comply with protectiveness to human health and the environment. It's just human health and the environment is the clause that you're evaluating. Whether you're doing environmental monitoring or not, you're evaluating it against human health and the environment.
And CERCLA is about environmental. We're not operationally going to the human health as part of the well network. It's just not done. It's not there for. It's not the purpose of it.
CERCLA has human health in it, and
Yeah.
CERCLA does human health, and we do human health risk assessment.
Right.
And the purpose of the main facet for the remedy is to ensure protectiveness of human health and the environment.
Right. As part of
Not one or the other.
Well monitoring network under CERCLA. So it's not, we're double stating it's what we're doing.
So Ed, the question here is, given that CERCLA specifically calls it human health and the environment, can you live with leaving human health in here? Or
No.
do we? Okay, so are you blocking consensus if we leave human health in the advice?
Oh, we just heard from two regulators that says it's included in the circle processes. So why don't we go with that?
Well, because
You got three people,
We would include it.
Yeah,
We would leave it there.
but it's like saying,
You're saying it's double counting.
It's
because
double
we're
counting.
monitoring the
and
environment.
it's confusion factor of, well, do you mean now the well learning system's gotta be human health, or are you including? You know, it's part of the circle process, so it's part of the environmental remediation process.
But I think his point is that if we were to say something like that, the monitoring well network, you know, ensures no change in the environmental conditions or something along those lines.
I'd be okay with that. It's just,
As
this
opposed
is the-
to calling out the circlet protecting us.
yeah, again,
the,
you know, this is 324. Casey, go ahead.
So to Chris's comment though, that Chris believes that it's potentially for another well to be needed. We want to assess the situation, and is that what we're asking for?
Why don't we say this as an alternative? Whether the monitoring well network is adequate to detect possible changes in contaminant concentrations during the removal and remediation of the building and soil, underlying soil, something like that.
Sure.
Because that's what we want to detect is changes in concentration.
Yeah.
And is the network adequate to do that if changes, if contamination is mobilized? So we want to detect changes in concentration.
It's during removal of the building and contaminated soil.
Yeah.
Can everybody live with that?
Yep.
Yeah, we're talking about that, so it's also important to me and Matthew and Simone. Can you all live with this as well? Not hearing you. I see your thumbs up and not hearing any against.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
One point of clarification, regarding the protectiveness of human health and the environment. With regard to the environment, we're talking about also just the plants, benthic invertebrates, and the sort. It's not just the media, water. So that's just a point of clarification.
With that, so I think we're at the point where we can check again. Have we resolved all the concerns with this draft advice?
Small, really small one, at the very bottom on the UCC. Also update Dave Enos name to Florida Beulah for EPA. Thanks.
Yeah, any other final concerns? Everyone live with this? Ready to see this in this form at the August board meeting? Isn't that not anything for, I think that's it, advice that's accepted. Thank you everyone for powering through this. So Tom, what do you think about a break point?
Let's do a break now, and come back at 3:25.
Everyone break up 3:25.
Okay, so welcome back from break. I'm going to give a quick book report on the life cycle report and how I can see the new layout helping us in work planning for the committee. First, I will throw the links for the slide deck in the chat because I know they don't work. So there those are. Okay. So disclaimer that this is not a presentation that the DOE or EPA or ecology have seen or approved. It's just a focused forum talk. It's just for some context and to spark some conversation. We'll talk about the big questions, big numbers, little details, and the have. So the 2025 Hanford Life Cycle Scopes Cost and Scope, Schedule, and Cost Report came out last month, published every 3 years, and it's sort of the best guess of the whole cost of the mission and how long it's going to take. And the content and format changes has changed and improved based on feedback over time. So that's the new layout has some cool things that we can use, I think. The reason that this document exists is there's a milestone requiring it. There's a lot of words in the milestone. That's why I put it in the chat, so you can read it on your own time. I'm not going to try to explain what it is other than there's some key points here. It shall reflect all those actions necessary for US DOE to fully meet all applicable environmental obligations, shall not assume any limitation on funding for future years. And then the TP agencies shall attempt to reach agreement on the report so it can serve as an agreed upon foundation for preparing budget requests and for informational briefings for affected tribal governments and Hanford stakeholders. So in a perfect world, the TP agencies would be presenting to us on the life cycle report when they come out. Maybe that's something we can work towards. Well, I think it was during last life cycle report 3 years ago that there was a comment from EPA that basically said there is no system plan for the site. There is for the tank mission, but not for the whole site. And this is sort of the closest thing we have. It's the only place where all of the cleanup tasks and tank missions meet on the same page and show us what's going to happen. It's a good conversation starter when funding and cleanup priorities are not aligned. And the new layout has some appendices that allow us to get into a little bit more detail and let us know what projects will be timely so we can provide actionable advice. So that's something to look at now. So it's published every 3 years. This is the 9th version, and basically a work group of DOE folks meets constantly. They started working on the 2025 report in November of 2022, and it's pretty constant. There's a public feedback period open for the document until June 14th. So is that next Friday? So that's the email address. This is where you can find it. I put those links in chat. It's got its own website, and it's also on the administrative record. So the report looks at sort of June 16th. Sorry about that. Mia corrected me. It's Monday, June 16th, not Friday, not Saturday, June 14th. Okay. The report's based on a deterministic estimate, so it's sort of one likely path that might get the site to done. And then it also has a high range, which accounts for some uncertainty. And there's not an analysis of alternatives, so it's sort of, you get 2 choices and that's it. One thing that I noticed in this year, that one of the assumptions is that any site without a record of decision, it seems like they assume that they're going to be able to leave the contamination in place and cap the material. That's just something to pay attention to. So here's the deterministic sort of best case option. The red line I added is our $3 billion a year funding that we're getting now-ish. So looking at 26, you're jumping up to 4.5-ish billion, all the way up to, $8.5 billion a year in 2060. So as mentioned in the milestone, you don't have to be realistic with the numbers that you're expecting, but this is what it's going to take to finish cleanup by 2086. The high level, higher numbers are higher, and that's up to sort of the $14 billion to get cleanup done. But I wanted to look at what that looks like for our committee. I took some of the tables and converted them and made some charts. So we could look at just what sort of the cleanup side of the life cycle report looks at. And these charts have a lot of lines. I tried to make them colorblind friendly, but we'll see how that worked. So this one looks at total cleanup funding, including, which is this sort of bluish flat line here. We got final reactor disposition, which is this big spike in the 2050s. We got transuranic waste retrieval, which is this little line at the bottom. And then we got groundwater and soil cleanup minus the uncertainty. So that's this spiky line here. These big peaks tend to be the PW 136 remediation. So the waste sites associated with the plutonium finishing plant. But if you look, I mean, that project gets up to close to $700 million in the 2060s. So that's going to be a big part of cleanup late in the game. So what does that mean from a sort of a cumulative evaluation here? Because those are all lines, but it's not additive. So wanted to look at that and also incorporated uncertainty and landfill costs. Landfill's not quite the CaRM scope, but it's an important number to think about. And the uncertainty on this next chart is, I added all the uncertainties from all the different categories. They were tracked individually, but this is sort of one big uncertainty lump. And so the yellowish orangish polka dot here is the landfills. The red stripes are uncertainty. Groundwater and soil, or this green dash. Vertical yellow and blue is going to be your transuranic, and then the cleanup funding is the dark blue. So if you take away uncertainty and landfills, there's only 1 year where the cleanup funding is above $1 billion, or one spike here. So we're really looking at a very small portion of the budget, but extended out for a very long time. And then legacy management is the other part. The cleanup mission officially ends in 2080, but the long-term stewardship continues, and there's also some uncertainty numbers associated with that. Long-term stewardship is an interesting thing to try to budget because it goes on forever. You're always going to be a steward of the site. So it's an infinite amount of money, which is a hard thing to wrap your mind around. But when you look at that one, the long-term stewardship itself by 2100 is up to $600 million a year. But once you add an uncertainty, that's sort of doubling it. So I'm not sure how that uncertainty is tracked. They don't really go into detail about what that uncertainty incorporates. But just something to think about if we're looking at long-term impacts of cleanup decisions, caps are more expensive to have long-term stewardship for than cleanup. So if we want to shrink this number, we need to do more cleanup sooner. So really quick, going into how we can use it. Sorry?
I have a question for you, Tom.
Yeah.
This is Bob Burke. Is this in current 2025 dollars, or is this in escalated dollars?
Escalated.
Yeah, it's escalated. There was discussion for the reactor disposition project, and they said it was $600 million in 2010, but $3.8 billion in actual cost it's going to be when it happens in 2050. So it is escalated. Okay, so we can use this. DOE has asked us to produce timely advice, and that definition of timely has been sort of just outside the budget cycle, so 4 to 5 years out, so they can use our advice when they're coming up with their plans and budgets. And there's tables that show, you know, at least one visualization of when that money will be allocated, and we can try to focus in on that. So we can use that as a roadmap for when major items could appear on our work plans. So here the yellow is stuff that's sort of past the ripe age for actionable. That's where we're going to be getting informational briefings on the actual work that's happening, but not something where we can be a part of the conversation of how things happen. The light green here is sort of the cutoff for when we might be able to get stuff in, and the sweet spots, the dark green, the 2029, 30, and 31. And so all of these different units have actions or budget allocated in those years. So a whole bunch of groundwater, which is already on our work plan, WESIF, which we want to talk about, transuranic waste, which we want to talk about for sure. And then the deep VADOS starts getting some funding again. And then cleanup in east area, inner area, outer area, west area, and all the other ones. There's these two areas, the solid waste burial grounds in 200 West and the PW 136 that we saw that big spike from, that aren't getting any funding until I think it's 2047 or something like that. So that might be something to think about, you know, if we can get that done sooner, maybe with that spike, that's $700 million in 2060 goes down. And those have been past priorities for the committee. Even though there's no action happening on them, it's something that we've been interested in talking about. And then the bottom stuff here is sort of adjacent to our scope, but not necessarily part of it. So that was a lot of condensed information coming at you quick. So based on, you know, the last two slides, which we can go back to, things to think about for open forum, is there anything that we want to bring to the leadership workshop that we feel like is appropriate to talk about in the next couple of years? And then the broader question, just is this focused forum idea something that is appealing? If the agencies don't have briefs to bring us, is it worth doing to have sort of a book report on something on the administrative record? So that's the focused forum portion. I see Dan's in queue.
Dan, then Chris. Go ahead, Dan.
Yes, thank you. The sodium at the fast flux test facility, they're supposed to start planning for that in 2026. So I think we should ask them to give us a presentation of what their ideas are and where they're going with it. That's coming up pretty soon.
That's a good point. And there was something in the life cycle report that I don't know the answer to, and that was they talked about repurposing the sodium for WTP. And I thought that we had heard a couple times now that was not likely going to be the case anymore. But that was included as an assumption in the life cycle report. So someone who knows more about WTP, if you know the answer to that, that would be good to talk through. But yeah, that 400 area is definitely on the request that I put in for topics.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Chris, do you have any questions?
Yeah, this was a point of interest. In the last meeting of the Budget Contract Committee, we had a discussion on the integrated priority list by the HMIS person who's in charge of the team that develops the integrated priority list. And talking to him afterward, he said that the same team also develops the 5-year plan. Every year, the 5-year plan and the life cycle cost report. And the interesting thing was, he said that there are different databases for each of these documents with different assumptions in there and different definitions of risk. So what you see in each of these documents, the 5-year plan for dates, times of things, may not necessarily be the same as what you see in the life cycle report. Because they do come from different databases with different assumptions and different risks. For example, the life cycle report, its risk is project risk, the risk that you will meet cost or schedule. The integrated priority risk takes into account risks to the workforce, risks to the public, and that gets fed into the 5-year plan. So there are differences in dates and schedules due to these assumptions. That's not to say that any one is less valuable than the other. It's just something to bear in mind that when there are differences, it could be because of the assumptions in the database or how risk is defined.
Yeah, it's interesting trying to find that alignment of all the different planning documents, and the 5-year, the placemat typically I found generally aligns with the life cycle report, but the 10-year vision doesn't necessarily.
Yeah, and for anybody who hasn't looked at the life cycle report, I recommend that you do so, at least to browse through it, because there's one heck of a lot of information in there that is not duplicated anywhere else in a single document. And it'll give you a really good overview of the scope of work that needs to be done at Hanford for it's clean. And it'll give you some idea of what costs are and what's involved. But there's a tremendous amount of information in there, and it's worthwhile everybody taking a look at it, even if it's just a brief cursory look.
Questions or comments on the life cycle report?
This is Rob here. When we looked at the 10-year plan and saw how iffy it became at the completion of the holistic negotiations, meaning that it really took away a number of the assumptions of the 10-year plan, the system plan. It's just struggling right now with understanding. Every year that we delay is another $4 or $5 billion that we have to have. And is there anything that we can do to say how to shrink the costs, become more efficient, to take a look at some of the stuff from the standpoint that where is our lost time? Is it in the paperwork? Is it getting the actual chores done? I don't know. I just, I look at these billions of dollars we're talking about last in the 10 years, or the system plan had it $138 billion just to get to the point of, in the 2070s. Whereas we start increasing this more and more and more. I don't know how they can think that they're going to be this accurate that we'll continue to fund these. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is there any milestone that we can put in to say, let's look at kind of customizing some of this stuff? That's kind of what they see with the whole idea that the offsite versus onsite, TISCR, AMP system, et cetera, that we're just spending so much money and so much delay on getting stuff done. I don't know.
That's really a good question, because when you look at the last life cycle report, the low risk case, the baseline case said cleanup done in 2078 at a cost of $303 billion. When you look at what Tom just presented, it's now been extended to 2086, 2085 and 2086 at a cost of $354 billion.
That's in 3 years. It's gone from,
And we've spent almost, about $8.5 billion in the last 3 years, or something like that. So I think that's a really critical question, you know? The cost just keeps going up and the time to clean up keeps getting longer.
And I didn't talk much about this, but they did try to align this plan with what they thought the holistic negotiations were going to come out with. And it seems like they did a pretty good job of forecasting at least the holistic negotiations results. There's a bunch of language in there about how the milestones that are in abeyance on the Central Plateau were not incorporated. So we really don't know what compliant cleanup looks like because the milestones that determine compliance are in abeyance. But I always go back to the $600 million to $3.8 billion over 50 years. It's the same number. It's just that's how much cost escalates over time. So if you can get the cleanup done faster, then it's cheaper. I mean, that's the only way around it. So
no, I would agree, and I also think there's a big hole in the holistic negotiation, which allows for adaptive milestones. So within a couple of years, you realize the milestone's not going to be met, they change it. I don't know how they're going to change it, but they're going to change it through the adaptive milestone process, which we still haven't heard how it's going to be used and who's going to use it.
Yeah, and it's so the whole site budget is so dependent on the tank waste mission. I mean, the cleanup side barely gets $1 billion a year, like for 3 years of its life cycle. The rest of it's, in the $700 million range. So what would happen if that got bumped up sooner and actually did a whole bunch of cleanup early and save some time? But you can't do both things, right? Because the budget's not going to be there unless you ask for it. Anyway, so the life cycle report is really well written. It's fairly easy to read, even if you're not in the deep weeds of Hanford all the time. And I highly recommend everyone take a look at it. I think it'll be a useful tool in coming years for conversation. And they do really get better every year, I think. Let's shelve any more conversation on that and move over to committee business for now. And then if we want to come back to either this or something related to it after we get through committee business, then we can do that. But want to be respectful of time here. So I guess Josh, what are we looking like for leadership elections?
Prior to this meeting, we received one nomination for each position. For CaRM chair, Tom Cecilia, you have been nominated as chair again. And Jim Doherty, our current vice chair, has been elected or nominated to continue serving as vice chair. In each case, willingness has been confirmed.
Is anybody else interested?
Yeah, any last minute nominations?
Anybody in the room or online that's eligible to serve as CaRM chair that would be interested in doing so? I didn't know there. Is there anybody in the room or online eligible to serve as CaRM vice chair that would be interested in doing so? Its terms that we begin the next fiscal year. That looks like a no.
So can we make a motion?
I think we'll make a motion. So we have Tom Celia as the one nominee for CaRM chair. Is everyone in agreement of him to continue to serve in this position? Any nods? Anybody not in support? Absolutely. You have been unanimously elected as CaRM chair. Congratulations.
Our commiserations.
And we're moving on to vice chair. We have one nominee, Jim Doherty. Is everyone in support of him continuing to serve as vice chair? Says I see nods. Is anybody not in support? Okay. Another unanimous election. Congratulations, Jim. And with that, I think our CaRM election has been concluded.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. So let's sort of check back in with sort of open forum and anything anyone wants to talk about for the next couple minutes, and then we'll look at what we're doing in our next committee meeting is in what, September?
Yeah, September 9 or 10.
Okay.
For that.
So anyone have anything life cycle related or just generic Hanford related for open forum?
Chris has something.
Yeah, this is just a point of interest, not necessarily related to CaRM, and I just read about it today. But some time ago, at a board meeting, I suggested that a possible advice might be for DOE tri-party agencies to consider artificial intelligence as an aid to expediting certain types of work here on site. And it sort of thumbs down, too much effort, blah, blah, blah. But in today's, or in the weekly update that Josh put out, in the EM newspaper, there's an article that Hanford now has an artificial intelligence that's been released to all employees. It's called HAL, Hanford Artificial Intelligence. It was developed by HMIS. It's available to all employees online now. And it didn't say what it helps you to do.
I use it all the time.
Or anything, but it's interesting that it's out there right now. And a small team of people developed in a year, only a year.
Wow.
So I thought that was pretty good.
What does it do? Background. Huh? What does it do? So HAL is, I don't want to take credit away from HMIS because they had to do their part of it. And Colleen, maybe you'll have more information being HMIS, but HAL is essentially ChatGPT, but they put ChatGPT into a smaller box because ChatGPT is worldwide.
Yeah.
So HAL is ChatGPT, because when I first started using it, it looked really familiar because I use ChatGPT every single day of my life. And so I asked, and it is. So it's the same framework. They just locked it down to Hanford. But it's essentially a person you talk to. So if I have an email that I have to respond to, but my brain is shot, like after today, when I go back to the office, I can say like, hey, tell them that I agree with it, but I need it to do this, and it'll make it sound smarter and actually put my thoughts together for me. It can take huge articles. So if there's big Hanford articles or a big, like a new policy that comes out, you can drop it into HAL and it can summarize and give you all of the key points, which is kind of nice. Especially with how short we are staffed right now, it really helps Hanford, at least DOE employees, do 3 jobs instead of 1. So AI is great if it's used in the right way. There's strong feelings both ways, but I feel like it's one of those things we have to keep up with the times. So HAL has definitely helped.
One of the things, I don't know if it's said in that article, but it's secure.
Yeah.
So that everything that you put in as a Hanford employee is safe. It's not, there's nothing from the outside that can come in and take anything, any information from it. So it's secure.
Do you know if HAL can query the administrative record?
Which administrative record?
Administrative record for the site.
So how, I don't know what date it is now. I know they were only into like 2023, like last month. Cause they're having to like upload everything that's Hanford related, so I don't know where it's at time wise, but it is, I mean, it is beneficial, and I will say, depending on what I'm using it for, if it's public, then like I'll use ChatGPT, cause like the Hab has a website. So there's times where it can help with Hab stuff, cause it already has that, but I think it's only gonna grow from here, but AI is definitely a beneficial tool.
Yeah, and Chris,
I can see.
as soon as I saw that EM update come in, I sent an email to Amber and said that should be something that the COE might want to talk about next year.
Yeah,
I think one application for artificial intelligence right now would be to look at all the various plans and make sure that you have dirty soil ready to use when you start dumping stuff and wanting to put the burial over the top.
I don't
Just
know how to
do
do
the
that.
planning to make sure you got a source for all the dirty stuff we want to put in there. That's all. Maybe they could coordinate,
Yeah.
you know, I'm gonna have this pit open, which is kind of dirty, and we'll leave it that way until we can bury the first level or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder if
But-
the interactive prep tool that was supposed to be part of the adaptive milestones to do that, figure out where the dirty dirt was going to come from.
I know where there's a lot of clean. And all the barges in the Columbia River that are dredging it because it's getting so shallow is clean. Duck it up here on barges.
Okay, well that's new and breaking news. Good job, Chris.
I absolutely. So, I got an email today, maybe everybody did, regarding the Hanford budget, going forward for next year. And, it continues to say that our funding will be flat from last year to next year, which is not the case throughout the EM program. One chunk that was deleted from the EM program is pretty straightforward. Savannah River site's been transferred to Annie
And NSA.
and then SA. Okay, so we're not competing for funds with Savannah River. But what I'm hearing, behind the scenes is that headquarters is not putting forward the funding. So, funding is short in spite of on paper, the budget is full. So I think this is a question to raise at the retreat with the leadership. What's the situation? And it's something we can talk to our congressional delegation about. Because that would be really unfortunate. But I mean, it's cool that Hanford is called out as a priority. And that they're not intending, at least from a general standpoint, to reduce funding for the upcoming fiscal year.
I would think Savannah River would still get an awful lot of EM money.
Well,
Ice farms and stuff.
Yeah, they're doing contract work for all the sites around the country. They're really expensive.
Okay. That's good to keep in mind, and yeah, we'll take the good news, but know that we should keep watching it. Do we have an idea of what the agencies are interested in bringing in September?
We were teased this morning saying we won't get it until
So most of the
Thursday.
people in this room, Tom, are the same that were here earlier, and it was like an hour-long conversation. So I'll give you the short version. If you have more questions, you can let me know, but we are, when you say what's coming in September, you talking work plan?
No, for
September.
our committee meeting.
Oh. Yeah. No. I'm
You'll find out on Thursday.
Yeah, so we will be going over the work plan on Thursday, and there's lots of fun changes in there. We can talk about it, more on Thursday.
Yeah, so-
But essentially,
The September committee meeting is on this year's work plan. So just one thing we try to do at the end of the meeting is figure out what we're going to talk about the next meeting.
yeah,
Okay.
is there anything you want or need to see?
Ryan, I suppose the perennial question is Rev 9. Will that be closer in September?
DPD, I don't have any more updated information given you. I know we'll be talking on some PI stuff tomorrow with the code committee, so we're still talking about it. So there might be something we could potentially bring. I don't want to commit anything though, because of the timing is so uncertain still. As soon as I know, I'll let you know.
Okay. Could this be another? I don't remember when the last time Jason Capron came and did his conversational presentation on sort of where cleanup is at the site. But that might be a good ask if we could do that.
And Tom, I think I heard on the ESC call last week, you had a request for potentially to see if we could do any kind of update on like the comprehensive cleanup kind of milestone stuff. So I still need to follow up with EPA and DOE on that one. So just know that we're tracking that one, and we'll get back to you on that.
Okay. Those were the asks that we had, I think, but I don't know whether there's anything emerging from the agencies that is going to be ripe. Okay. Other than that, we can work out at the leadership workshop and hope that we get some good content.
So Tom, you're gonna get an email from Josh that's going to the all the leadership people. So just take a look at that when it gets there.
Okay, sounds good. Does anyone else have anything extremely urgent to discuss this afternoon?
For the whole afternoon, I did want to check back in on, sound like we want to maybe form an IM team around best practices.
That's a good one. I put that note in there. I should have remembered it. Yeah, let's do that. Let's start an IM team for ERDF best practices in support of EPA's 2019 request to the board. I'll start it, but anyone else who wants to join can join.
Anyone here interested in joining this IM team? Let's see the name of it first. They have a more appealing name, Tom. Has joined.
I'll nominate Richard Blount.
Yeah.
Well, we can certainly add him to the invite. Anybody else interested in joining?
You can put my name on
Okay. And that's Rob Davis. I got to start.
Okay. I'll take a look at some stuff and try to get something out after August.
Give us more selection on days during your doodle poll.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're on less of a time crunch for sure.
Not tricky schedules. Yeah.
That was my fault.
Come on, I'm gonna blame Tony.
Just
You can blame me all you want. All right, so Josh, unless anyone is there raising their hands and jumping up and down, I think we got a lot done today, and I appreciate everybody showing up and speaking up and being collaborative. So have a great afternoon.